Hey there, my name is Alex, I am the Silver Mont, and this is my review of Final Fantasy Crystal Chronicles Remastered on PlayStation 4. Disclaimer time. I received 2 review codes from Square Enix, one for myself and one for a friend, for the purposes of covering the game for you guys. I received no monetary compensation or anything like that. That out of the way, let's get on with the review. As this is a re-release of an older game, I will focus most of this review on the remastered aspects, but first and foremost let's talk about Crystal Chronicles. What is it? The original game came out 15 or more years ago, 2003 in Japan and 2004 in most of the world. The premise of the game is that you set out in a caravan from a village in order to go on a dangerous journey to harvest a precious liquid from trees that renews the crystals that protect the village from the deadly miasma that covers the world. Gameplay wise, it's a dungeon crawling action RPG wherein you need to move along with a crystal chalice that protects you from the miasma. In single player, you have a Moogle that will carry it for you, following you around. In multiplayer, players can lift and drop the chalice as needs be. You cannot attack whilst holding it, so you need to put it down to engage in combat. And the game is around 20 to 30 hours long. As for the combat, you have a command list that you'll map to a button, allowing you to swap between various abilities such as attack, defend, spells, and items. Upon starting the game, you'll create a character from various tribes. Clavats, who are your basic humans, Lilties, who are akin to Lalafels or Tuturus, the dwarf race who excel in physical combat in this case, the magically oriented Ukes, and so on. Each tribe has their own weapons, sword and shield for Clavats, lance for Lilties, and so on, but outside of that, everyone can attack or use magic. Some just have higher stats in magic than physical, and whatnot. Basic physical attacks are done with timed combo inputs, or you can hold the button for a charged focus attack. This is similar to how magic works. You charge it up, and then you put your spell cursor over an enemy and release. In multiplayer, you can combine various spells to enhance their power, such as if 2 players both cast fire and fire overlapping, it will make it a stronger fire spell. Or if one player uses fire and the other uses blizzard at the same time, you can get gravity. The gameplay is fairly simple, yet fun in that sense. Enemies drop items and artifacts, which are treasures that you carry throughout the dungeon that boost your stats. At the end of the dungeon, you're allowed to pick 1 artifact for each player to permanently keep and increase your stats. So the game isn't really level based, your strength comes from equipment. You can craft stronger armor and weapons at various smiths. There's also Moogle stamps to collect that allow you to mimic other characters, basically outfits or skins in a sense. For the most part, the gameplay is the same as the original, a game I played 15 years ago with my friend, then we played it again in 2020 with the remastered version. So let's talk about that, shall we? First up, there's 2 versions of this remaster, the light version and the full version. Light version is free and allows you to play the start of the game and the first couple of dungeons for free. The game is coming to PlayStation 4, Switch, and mobile phones. The mobile version is the light version by default, with in-app purchases to unlock more of the game. As for the full version, you can play with people from any platform with crossplay. Owners of the full version can play with those who have the light version, allowing them to access stuff they wouldn't get otherwise, which is nice. When you go into the friends list in the game, you can find your friend code, which you then give to others, so you can play with people on their phones when you're on your PS4, and so on. And if you meet random players out in the world, you can follow them, and if they follow you back, you get the idea. Very similar to a lot of gacha games, friend systems, if you played anything like Brave Exvius or whatever. As far as remasters go, it's not a crazy overhaul visually. The resolution is bumped, the textures are sharpened, and the character models have higher clarity. Things like water shaders and particle effects might be improved too, but you'd have to check someone like Digital Foundry for a thorough analysis there. In general, the game has a charming art style that's held up very well for a 15-year-old game, meaning the game's visuals, while simple, aren't what I would call dated. Aside from the touched up visuals, we have new high difficulty dungeons unlocked after beating the base game, a new magic timer system to make spell fusion easier in online play, a quick chat function for communicating with preset messages with other players. The game's minimap is now always visible, and there's some new items, the option to replay world events from the diary, and last but not least, we have new music composed by the original game's composer. If you're a fan of Final Fantasy XI, as me and my friend are, you'll notice his style in the game's music, as he also did a lot of the music in Final Fantasy XI, which is really nice. And along with the new music and some new recordings and in-game narrations, we also have new English voiceovers. I believe that's about it for all the new features for this version. Overall, I think it's a pretty good re-release that keeps much of the spirit of the original intact and brings it to a new generation, in this online age of gaming we're in. The notion of crossplay between 3 platforms is great, as I'm all about that. I don't like being unable to play with my friends just because they're on a different platform than I am, even though we have the same game. I'd love to see a Steam release too on that count. And some other issues or suggestions I have? Well, for starters, I feel like I have to warn you about the matchmaking. It's very possible if you're going in with, open matchmaking, no private lobbies or whatever, that someone joins your group, picks up the chalice, and goes sprinting off like a lunatic with it, using speedrun strats to just run to the end of the level whilst you might be trying to explore. Well, it means you have to keep up with them or die. Keep that in mind, set your session to private if you'd rather avoid that. Otherwise, well, the game's command input system could definitely be improved on console. For example, X on PS4 will always be the command, so if I'm attacking and I want to defend, I have to hit R1 to tab over to defend and then hit X to defend. But we have so many buttons on modern controllers, why can't we map certain commands to certain buttons? Why can't I have R2 as attack, L2 as defend, and X for, the interchangeable one? I would love to see that feature patched in, as I think it would make the game feel so much better. Likewise, I'd love to see an option for damage numbers. I enjoy these as a feature because it helps me to test out what is more effective when it comes to attacks. And if you could toggle it on and off, that would be really helpful. Finally, the way that online is implemented is a little strange. There's no overworld or world map. Oh, and as a quick aside, as I just remembered, it would be really nice if we could have a full dungeon map to view in a menu somewhere. But going back to my other point, yeah, there's no world map co-op. You can't set out from the same village as your friend and witness world events together. You just team up when you enter dungeons together. And whilst the joining player keeps items and such, they won't get progress from the trees at the end. Which means if you're playing through the game with a friend, you might have to do every dungeon twice. Once with you as host, once as them as host. I think that's fine for random matchmaking. Like, if you just want to go and do some random co-op, sure. If you want to play the whole game with a friend or 3 friends, so you're in the same caravan from the same village, witnessing the same events, walking around towns together, I think if that feature can be added, well, it'd make me very happy. It's largely a matter of immersion, I suppose, but I think a big part of the fun on going on a journey with your friends in this sense is, them being there for the whole thing. In summary, I'm happy with this remaster for the most part, though I'd like to see some quality of life features patched in. The load times on PS4 were a bit long for a game that's basically a GameCube port, so I think they could optimize the game a little more, improve the loading times a little bit, They weren't intolerable, but they did seem noticeably long for this sort of game. It's quite a unique game. It has a very Final Fantasy feeling to it. After all, what is Final Fantasy if not going on an adventure with your friends to protect the crystals? I'd love to see a modern reimagining of the game too, like a spiritual successor made in the Luminous engine or something like that. A next-gen Crystal Chronicles game. But for the time being, I am happy to get the chance to properly play a game that I never managed to get to clear in the past, thanks to the whole ordeal with managing link cables and all that back in 2004. If you're a fan of Final Fantasy, I'd say definitely check it out. With the free version being available, there's nothing to lose. With cross-platform play, that's really cool. You can play on your mobile, your friend can play on his PS4, whatever. It's a fun little Final Fantasy game. Thanks again to Square for providing me with review codes, and thank you so much for watching. I will catch you next time. And Crystal Chronicles is out this Friday, I believe. Till then, ciao.